Hello, innovators. I'm Todd and welcome to the Bridging the Gap podcast presented by Applied Software. You're invited to join our MEP and construction innovation adventure with a mission to propel this great industry forward. My guest today is Paul Collart, VP of Strategic Engagement of Cupix. He has had a technology-focused career spanning more than 25 years. Paul has held executive positions focused on the development of implementation of mobile and terrestrial 3D scanning, 3D tours, 360 imagery platforms, BIM, BDC, AR, VR, and much, much more. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
Absolutely. Excited for the conversation. So let's start with how you got into the construction industry.
So it started way back when in college. I actually was in a mechanical engineering program and always had an interest in architecture. And so I actually started in architecture my senior year in college, even when I was in school. So I started working 25 hours a week, trying to graduate with an engineering degree at the same time, and got myself into kind of the CAD world at the time. There was not such a thing as BIM at the time, but experience from using these high-end, enterprise CAD CAM systems for mechanical engineering, use those skills to kind of get in and apply that technology in architecture. Eventually I had ideas of trying to get licensed in architecture, but found really quickly that I gravitated towards the technology, the implementation, the workflow, and how that can be applied in not just architecture. I was involved in applying it in construction and facilities and other types of related fields in architecture.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So what was it about the technology and implementation side of things that really kind of pulled you in?
Well, it was early on when I got started, so a little different today. So it was the idea of taking manual type processes, getting them on the computer, and then also leveraging higher end technologies like rendering in 3D, which at the time was very new and a lot more difficult than it is today in terms of being able to create animations and renderings and things like that. I love the process. I was always interested in the kind of the AEC process and being involved with that, and how can we get technology into that process, and always gravitated to trying to implement technologies that everybody can use, not just kind of the top 5-10% of people that understand technology. So the more people that can use it, the more beneficial it can be. So, which usually gravitates to something very easy for everybody to use, which isn't always easy in technology in the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So what have you noticed throughout your career that are maybe some key foundational building blocks for a company to adopt technology well?
I would say just having a plan and having champions to be able to then, one, figure out the best implementation, the easiest implementation, and then being a resource for those people to make sure that they're successful in implementing those technologies. Probably one of the keys I see out there.
Yeah. Any advice on how to find those champions that are going to put you in the best position?
Sometimes those people are hard to find.
Yeah. They hide sometimes.
Well, and those are the types of people that we're trying to bring on internally to be champions for customers leveraging the Cupix platform. So,
yeah. So how do you explain those fairly complex, maybe technologies or ideas and concepts in a simplistic way in order to gain that buy-in from people that really have a diverse background of experience and knowledge, and maybe aren't the most technical, or maybe you're talking to a very wide range of skills and backgrounds. How do you get that complex down to the simple?
It's always a challenge. If I were to look at it from with my Cupix hat on, we really approach it with using an analogy of similar to, let's say, Google Street View. And we definitely at the basic level just make it so that it's that easy for people, for the masses to get into the system. But at the same time, we can then, depending upon the audience we're talking to, we can get into more advanced features. But the key is really not, is really addressing the simplest of features so that everybody can get into it. So with Cupix, we can get in and apply it to your more advanced people. Let's say they're in the BIM BDC group and really understand the technology. So,
yeah. So from the technology provider side, you're saying it's important to have kind of those different tiers, have the simplistic feature sets that everybody can kind of get that buy-in, and then you can ramp up and scale up in degree of difficulty from there.
Exactly. And really understanding the audience that you're talking to. You don't want to be talking to a project executive on the most advanced features for BIM BDC, for example. So it's really just for everybody starting simple, knowing your audience, and then decide if you can go into the more advanced features to the audience that you're talking to. So it's really addressing, are you talking to an executive, a project manager, a project engineer, a BIM VDC expert? Is it a property owner, building owner, facilities manager? It's just kind of really knowing who that audience is and deciding what to really, you don't want to overwhelm them with the technology. So.
Right. Makes total sense. So why is it important to generate really solid buy-in for technology before you start the implementation process?
I mean, if you don't have the buy-in, it's just not going to be successful. So it's really important to get buy-in from the top all the way down. And if you have buy-in, then everybody's invested in making it work.
I'm a big believer in defining terms. So maybe let's back up for those that are listening. How would you define buy-in? I think there's a little nuances that people can take to that. So for you, what is buy-in?
I would say buy-in is just commitment from the entire team to really put the effort to implement the solution. So it would be financially and time and, commitment to really learn it and implement.
Yeah. Nice. So, you kind of have two scenarios of where buy-in starts, either from the top down or from the bottom up, and it has that grassroots. How is it different if it is top down versus bottom up? What do those two different scenarios look like?
From the top, it's really the message is how it's going to improve your business. How are you going to save money and make sure that you're going to get your investment back? A lot of times from the bottom up, it's really, sometimes we're dealing with the technical people, and is really showing kind of the technical abilities of platforms and what it can do to enhance them. That's, where we find at Cupix is at the bottom, a lot of times it's project engineers, BIM BDC, that really understand the technology, want to embrace the technology. Again, the executives are more just the bottom line. How is it really going to improve, and are we going to save money using a solution?
Yeah. Well, let's shift focus a little bit, and can you kind of go down the trail for me, unpack the power of having context around any particular construction issue, and why is that valuable to know exactly where an issue is on the job site?
So one of the issues recently is it's very difficult for everybody to get on a project site. With the pandemic, you're restricted as to who can go on site, who can travel. So Cupix being a digital twin platform, or maybe think of it as kind of a virtual tour, 3D tour, it provides the context, not just in, let's say, an XY, let's say at a plan view, but also in the 3D. So we understand that basic context. And most of the time, people in kind of existing processes is just taking 2D photos, let's say with an iPhone. And the problem is this data is just kind of stuck in a folder. Unless people spend a lot of time organizing the data, it's really hard to get to that information and know where the context of exactly where that is, when was it taken. And that's what Cupix really does for people. It really gives them the context of where you are and provides that context where sometimes people working, let's say, with 2D drawings, working with 3D models, not everybody in this world can understand kind of the 3D space from that type of information. You know, the majority of the population can't visualize in 3D.
Right.
So I've even worked with architects that can't visualize in 3D in some cases. And the idea of, let's say, a 360 image, similar to, let's say, Google Street View, everybody can understand that context and understand what is really there. And I think different with Google Street View, what Cupix is doing is providing kind of the detailed information, whereas Google Street View is really kind of at a macro level, whereas Cupix and what we're providing is at a micro level, in that we understand where the level, we understand where you are, let's say in a plan, if it's architectural, mechanical, electrical, we understand where it coexists in a BIM model, and makes it so that it's just very easy for people to understand the context of where they are, and have that visual information that's not abstract, like you would get with, let's say, a 2D drawing or a markup or something like that.
Yeah, nice. Where's the construction industry in actually really adopting and then embracing the digital twin technology?
So it's just starting. I think we're at this transition where people are starting to address digital twin or adopt digital twins. And one of the keys to that is really just the ease of use, to make it very easy to do. And if it isn't easy and you can't get that data fast and quickly, it's going to be very hard to embrace it in the construction industry. So that's why with our solution, it's just a 360 camera, put it on a selfie stick, put it on a helmet, and you're just walking the site. Granted, we prefer you walk it slowly, and I think if it becomes easy to use, people are going to start adopting it more. And I also think what's also going to make it more prevalent is owners starting to request this digital twin information as they start realizing the benefits of having this data or having this unified information during operations, maintenance, and facilities. And so I think as those owners start realizing that the overall ownership or cost of the building over its life really is in operations and maintenance, not in the initial construction of that building. And as they start realizing that, they will start to realize they're missing a lot of information during construction or during tenant improvement projects that could be used to enhance them in the overall life of that building. And having that contextual information so that if they're performing a tenant improvement or remodeling a building, they have a lot of context there to make better decisions as to what they should be doing, as opposed to wondering, is this wall structural, or is there a column, or is there ducting, electrical work, any of that in there, and help them make those decisions in that process of deciding on what they're going to do with their buildings.
Yeah. Why do you think that there hasn't been, or there's the groundswell of owners really making that a requirement isn't fully there yet? That tide hasn't, fully peaked, or maybe what will cause that tide to swell up more? Does that make sense?
No, it does. And I think that what we're doing at Cupix in providing, let's say, a Google Street View of their entire facility, it becomes much easier to use. So I know there's this groundswell of owners requiring BIM models, but the problem with that is a lot of times the owners, the facilities groups don't really know what to do with that BIM model. And that BIM model is also very abstract. And a lot of times those BIM models aren't necessarily what was built. So there's this whole concept of what was designed by the architect, mechanical, electrical, structural, and then what was actually built.
Right.
And they don't always coincide. But that's also where you're seeing a transition of contractors being involved and updating the BIM model from an as designed to as built for a handover to that owner. But still, that BIM model is still abstract. It depends how much detail is put into that BIM model. So it's still very hard to visualize, even though it's in 3D.
Right.
And with Cupix having that visual, well, we're showing you exactly what is there, as opposed to an abstract representation of there that's in a 3D model. And I think that's going to help with the adoption. And we're seeing that also in other industries also, where people are starting to use our software in oil and gas and maritime and other industries, where traditionally what they're using for digital twins is high-end technology that's super expensive, very expensive equipment, and very labor intensive. And we're getting a lot of traction in these other industries because they can just go out there with a 360 video and get spatial context to their project and spend a fraction of the money they would with other systems. So I think that the ease of use technology, cheaper technology, not necessarily I say cheap, but it's very beneficial to them, is gonna enable them to start leveraging this technology more kind of in the operations, maintenance, and facilities of these, either a facility, a building, those types of industries.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's an important bridge to connect with bringing the kind of the analog world of how it's actually being built in with the digital world of how it was designed, and to merge those two together, and make it easy to go back and forth between the two different analog and digital worlds. So you talked about it a little bit, but I'd love to drill down a bit more. How does the digital twin technology kind of concept, how does that need to be applied in construction differently than it is in other industries?
So, yeah, we've been talking about digital twins, but I think it's important to kind of define a digital twin, because I think a lot of people have a different idea of what a digital twin is. And so, digital twins are most commonly defined as a virtual representation of a physical asset, a system, or even just a process. And it's designed to help kind of detect, prevent, optimize, predict whatever you're working with. And where you typically see digital twins today is not necessarily in construction, but you see it more often in, let's say, kind of mechanical engineering or manufacturing, industrial type situations. And many times it's just real-time data coming into the system. Like, imagine a jet engine. A jet engine has all these sensors everywhere providing you real-time information as to what's happening. And with that, you're able to predict and help maintain and analyze and optimize that engine. So our concept of this digital twin technology in the construction process is leveraging 360 imagery and as opposed to, let's say, this real-time feed of sensor data, which you don't have on a construction site, because it's changing every hour, daily, weekly, it's constantly changing. So how we're applying this is just leveraging 360 imagery with video and using that as a real-time feed of data. So imagine you're capturing once a week, 2 times a week, every day. With 360 imagery, we're then able to take the differences of that data and analyze how that construction site is changing and kind of leverage that data as kind of a real-time sensor. It's not real-time sensor, but a daily sensor, every other day sensor, and detect what's installed, what's not installed, how much is installed, and provide this real-time feedback to help with the progression and the progress tracking of that facility.
Yeah.
And hopefully that kind of makes sense to you in terms of how we're applying that digital twin kind of technology you typically see in industrial manufacturing into construction.
Yeah, absolutely. So what do you think the main value then of digital twin in that context is for the job site?
So, I mean, one is there, I think multiple benefits. One, anybody can get to the site at any time. So everybody can get there and get context to issues or just simply walk the site without having to get there. Mm-hmm. And then the next step of that with the digital twin and providing real-time feedback is we're definitely helping with scheduling, billing, being able to detect if subcontractors actually did the work that they want to get paid for, and helping with that. Many times dealing with critical path items on that construction project to make sure that they're getting met, and we're helping provide that real-time feedback as to, you know, is it getting delayed or not delayed, and helping with that scheduling.
Yeah, nice. So if we look out over the next kind of 5 years, how do you see digital twin technology really evolving in the construction space?
I see it getting, you know, more integrated, because a lot of times you're seeing this idea of progress tracking with the digital twin on a construction site is not getting used on a lot of projects. Mm-hmm. So it's something like a lot of times today people are just, they might have a few projects that maybe have big budgets that can actually use it. But what we see with the technology getting better and better, something that can be used on every project. And with the cost of it getting to a point where, again, it's as easy as walking around taking video and being able to use it on any project that you might be using. And it doesn't necessarily have to be used on every object to track everything. But even on those smaller projects, just like I was mentioning earlier, focusing on those critical path items to make sure that you're staying on track on that project.
Yeah, nice. So I like kind of poking at some misconceptions. Do you think that there's something around digital twins that is a total misconception that construction has about the technology?
I think one misconception is if you just have a BIM model, that's it, you know, but it's a digital twin. Uh-huh. I think it's a portion, you know, you need some of those things to come up with a digital twin, but a digital twin, it's more of a concept really to deliver business value. And if you're not providing business value, you don't have a digital twin. So it's really, you know, it's the idea of, you know, detecting, predicting, optimizing to provide business value. So if you just have a BIM model, if you're not doing those other things to provide business value, you really don't have a digital twin. Because it really is a combination of plans, BIM, predicting, optimizing, and leveraging all that to get a better outcome.
Yeah, I agree. The way I kind of put it in my head, and this may be oversimplifying it, is going back to what we were talking about with the analog and digital world. The BIM model is your digital world, but then how do you pair that with the analog world of what's actually happening in the physical world? And that connection point is where digital twin really comes in, because it's the combination of all of that.
It's a combination of all of it, not just plans.
Yeah.
It's a combination of all that. So totally agree with you.
So if you could innovate one thing in the industry, you could just snap your fingers and it's done, what would you innovate?
That's a tough question. I think being involved in this area of AR, VR, XR, point cloud technology, LiDAR, really it'd be the ability to just a snap of a finger, just get a complete representation of any physical asset with a snap of a finger. And be it, let's say a BIM model, 3D model, a snap of a finger.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
So my when I was in architecture, working day to day, it was a lot of tenant improvement projects for very high tech type situations. So very heavy MEP type technical facilities. And that was always a challenge of capturing and getting those physical assets into a 3D model with very complex type systems.
Yeah.
So snap of a finger, you're done. That would be
nice. That would create a lot more efficiency in this industry.
Very much
sure.
so.
I like it. Well, how do people find out more information on Cupix and connect with you?
So you can go to www.cupix.com. And many times I'll tell people that Cupix is not a dating app. But it is actually, there was actually a reasoning behind the term Cupix, not something I came up with, but our founder used it. He was using the combination of cube and pixels to come up with Cupix. Yeah. So we're creating 3D or cubes from pixels. So
nice.
So there actually is a meaning behind it, and it is not a dating app.
I like it. I like the meaning. That works well. I get it. Nice. Well, last question, Paul. What does innovation mean to you?
I guess my concept of innovation is really just being able to apply technology to solve business problems effectively. I guess it's as simple as that.
Yeah, I like it. It's a good answer. Well, Paul, thanks so much for joining the show. And unpacking digital twin and construction. It was a great conversation.